First of all, this has been lots of trepidation for me. I only get nervous in my life when I'm doing two things. One is when I'm playing golf, and the other is when I'm cooking steak. But I'll have to tell you that this has made me nervous. Okay? Having a room with 135 women, I never had a sister. I went to an all-male school. I did my training at Duke, no women. And so this is about as much estrogen as I've ever been in my life. Now, there has been a lot of revenge on the part of women in my life because I married one of the strongest-willed people in the world. And two of my three children are women, females. And then I had 8 grandchildren, and 7 of them are female. And the other night, my wife was just laughing uncontrollably when she was looking at a car. And on it said, if a husband speaks in the forest and his wife isn't listening, is he still wrong? Well, that's what I live with every day. But today is a kind of a special thing because it's allowed me to crystallize in my mind the role that and the relationships I've had with women in my career, and then also in our, we have 22 employees and 3 doctors, and everybody else is female. So it's been really, so what I'm going to try to do is to weave through some of the things we're going to talk about. Experiences of women and what I've learned from my, does that work at all? And what do I do? Okay. Speaking of women, okay. She keeps me going. All right. The reason why I'm here, of course, is because I wrote this book. It's called Much Abides, a survival guide for aging lives. Much Abides comes from Tennyson. It's one of the most amazing poems about aging. It's called Obesity, and it's the last stanzas. And it's much abides, much is lost, but we still have a lot. But there's things that we have to do to adjust in order to age well. I hate the term successful aging. It just feeds into a stereotype that there's a certain way that you have to do things. And there's a certain standard, and I hate that. I like that things get upside down and a little bit crazy. So what happened was 3 themes came together for me to write the book. The first theme was a fascination with stories. I come from Celtic origin. My mother is pure Irish, and my father is Scotch-Irish or Scots-Irish. And our holidays were nuanced by these amazing stories. My grandfather, my father, my uncles, my aunts telling stories. And I began to realize just that's what makes life interesting. What happens to people? What are their lives like? What have they had to work through? And so those fascinations with stories helped me be a better doctor. The more that I knew about the patient, the better diagnostician I could be. And then late in my career, I realized that it was the one way that I could change behavior. That the patients that I operated on, oftentimes they smoked, they didn't take care of themselves, they were overweight, and I would try to alter their behavior. And I couldn't. I had a window, and I would take the curtain back, and I would say to a person who's smoking, I would say, if you keep smoking, you can end up in that nursing home there, drooling on yourself. And they'd say, oh my God, and they would keep smoking. So I learned that if I said, where do you want your story to go? Because we're all writing a story. Every day, decisions that we make, we're writing a story. How do we want this to end? And it turned out, and in the book, I talked about a Penn State football player that I had this relationship with. And it was amazing how he responded to the fact that he wanted his story to end in a different place. The second, and many of you will be with me on this, the second theme that came to fruition was about a word that my colleagues, my friends, couldn't even say, and that was retirement. Every one of them was terrified of it, and it was like that they had been really successful, and the idea that they were going to have to change frightened them. And the stories just came back over and over again. What am I going to do? Who am I going to be? And then the third, and the most important, was what happened with my patients and their families. I didn't really have any idea what this clinic was going to look like. Mary and I, there were just two of us the day we started. We were a nonprofit. And I thought I knew what it was going to be like, but I didn't. The relationship that I would have with these families and these patients was different than I thought it would be. And and it changed me. It changed me as a physician, and it changed me as a person. So those people, their lives were truncated. Retirement. What a joke when you talk to someone caring for a person with Alzheimer's. Retirement. Every day is a struggle. And so I wanted to be a voice for them. And so part of what came out in the book was finding a voice for those people. Okay, today we're going to get through some stuff. First thing is I'm going to try to convince you that the aging process affects your brain. And then I'm going to try to tell you what the effects look like and then how we compensate for it. And then we're going to talk a little bit about women and the unique journey they have with aging and also with dementia. These are the Brown sisters. I wonder if y'all know about this. In 1974, Nicholas Nixon, who was married to Bibi, who was this one, took a picture on a family vacation. And they took the same order, and he did it every year for 40 years. And you notice that it says the actual effects of time. Time is really one of the most amazing phenomena because we don't sense the passage of time. We don't know what's different yesterday or tomorrow. All we do is see it. And where, especially in women, where you see it in your face and your body. Men, not so much, okay? I walk around, and they got something sticking out their ear, and they don't even know it, okay? All kinds of things. So this is what it looks like. 81, 82, attitude, no smile. 91, start to see the age. What we're seeing is the effect of time on faces, body, and habitat, on their physiognomy. Notice the wrinkles, notice the change in their faces, a little bit of coarsening. 97, 99, 11, 17. I love the fact that they touch each other. You can tell that maybe one of them has had a problem, there's some kind of health issue, and they're closer to one another as they've aged. You notice before, a lot of times they were sitting with their arms crossed. So, I love them more in this picture than I did at the beginning. This has been at the Museum of Modern, at the Metropolitan several times. So what we see is the effect of time on our bodies. Okay, you can see it on our face. Wrinkles, which are not bad, by the way. I've got a partner that does Botox, and all my damn nurses are lining up to get Botox. They got bruises all over. What are you doing? Okay, Katie, you're not doing Botox, are you? Okay. Then this is a two slides. The one on the left is what happens in a race. 100-yard dash, 200 meters, 300 meters, a mile. Look what happens as we age. I can't believe they found a guy 95 years old to do a 100-yard dash. I guess it ceases to be a dash. But here's where it gets scary. Cognitive decline. Right? Cognitive decline. So in every one of the tests that Saltash gave to people, look at the decline that occurred over time. Okay? So we, from the age of 28, in fluid intelligence, we decline. That's why it's amazing that you go out here and the guy's walking across the road. He's got his hat on backwards, his pants are all the way down, and he actually would do better on these tests than you and I. Okay? Now, the only two things that go across like that, one is antonym and the other is vocabulary. So that's an indication of what is called crystallized intelligence. So fluid intelligence is the intelligence we use to solve problems devoid of life experiences. Okay, this is IQ. And this is where at 28 you start going down. All right, so then that's fluid intelligence. Crystallized intelligence is the intelligence we use to solve problems using life experiences. Vocabulary being one, we learn more words, and so actually we do better up until about 75. Right? So we do improve. Okay? This guy on the left is Albert Einstein in 1905 when he published the special theory of relativity. No experiments or anything. All he did was, it was in his brain. The guy on the other side is the clown, which is Albert Einstein. And he was the one that said, when Heisenberg said to him, that you can never predict, because everything is random, it's uncertain. And he turned to him and he said, God does not roll dice. So wisdom is what crystallized intelligence is. Fluid intelligence, we need it, but it gets old listening. But that's why I'm still smarter than my 44-year-old son. Okay. One of the things I wanted in the book was to put the science behind aging. I noticed that all the stuff that I would read, they would tell me what part of the brain was involved and what it did to the cells, but it didn't tell me what it did to me. What is it that changes? And but pop culture would say, oh, you need to do this and this and this, and it sounded ridiculous to me. So what I tried to do was to put the science behind aging. And one of the things that I came up with is that the area of the brain called the prefrontal cortex in the front, and you notice Neanderthals have a flat skull, just flat. But Homo sapiens have forward projection of their frontal bone where the prefrontal cortex lies. The prefrontal cortex is the most important thing that's happened evolutionary-wise in history. And because it allows us, and it's still a work in progress, as Dr. Grafton says, because our brains are still evolving. Now, I'm not so sure that we're going on the right track, but prefrontal cortex, this is what happens. This is where we're able to solve simple problems. This is where we are smart. Okay? This is where, and we see this all the time in patients that I have that have frontal lobe involvement from dementia. And what happens is that they lose their ability to weigh risk. And we have people come in having families been devastated, lost millions of dollars because of that risk factor. It's the site of long-term memories. With Alzheimer's, you still remember stuff. You can remember, I don't know any woman that can't tell me the first boy she ever kissed. Okay? Now, guys, not so much. Multitasking, we're going to talk a little bit about that. One of the things that the frontal lobe allows us to do is to do several things at once. The most important, or two of the most important things that the frontal lobe allows us to focus, it also allows us to limit distractions. So those two things allowed us to solve problems. And then came fire, the wheel, the atom bomb, the Mustang, all kinds of great stuff came from those simple things, right? It also is where creativity, mostly on the right side, and then also it's where social boundaries are. Teenagers don't have the frontal lobe. All right, so what happens is that, what are you shaking your head for? Yeah, he doesn't have the frontal lobe, does it? Okay. All right, so here I've told you that this prefrontal cortex is the most important part of your brain, and it's the most important part of everyone's brain. Where do you think aging hits us the hardest? Prefrontal cortex. Sometimes by the age of 70, it has decreased in size by 20%. Okay? Now, what does that look like? You already know this. Y'all can write this. But what we have is difficulty focusing. Get distracted so easily. It seems so simple. I was doing my checks, and then I had to get up, and then I came back, and I had to start over. When you are 26 years old, you don't have to start over. You just go right where you were, and on you go. But, okay, easily distracted. One of the things, you can take someone that's 65 years old, and I've seen pictures of this, where they're filming someone and they present a problem that's difficult to solve. And the person at 65 years old will go back and keep going back to the same unsuccessful element over and over again. And he won't open up his mind. A young kid comes in and they look at it and say, that's not working, let's do this, and they got to solve. Okay? Reading the intention of others. One of the signs of people who are super agers, and that will be for another day, because I think most of y'all think you're super agers anyway. One of the things is reading the intention of others. There's a survivor, because if someone had sinister motives and you felt like that they were evil or they were a threat to you, boom, you are on it. If you're not, then it takes you out. So therefore, this is a marker for survival. We slow down in our processing. Think about this. You're at a family dinner, and you've got grandchildren, children, and now I'm 74 years old, and it used to be, I was Prince Hamlet, I was the one controlling it. Now, I can barely keep up with all the nuances and stuff. I don't like it. I like being Prince Hamlet, but that's gone. We can't push ourselves anymore. As we age, if we get on a treadmill, it used to be you'd say, I'm going to do this. And it would hurt, and you'd feel good about it. Now, said, oh, whoa, that was too much. I don't like pain. I don't like pain. All right, the two major deficits in the decline in the prefrontal cortex is the ability to multitask. Think of a young lady, she's 31 years old. She's got 3 children at her feet, and she's cooking. And she's talking to her mother-in-law on the phone. She's got it all. The kid gets a little close, she goes by. She's talking about something important, and she's fixing dinner. Okay? When you get to be 75 years old, you're not doing 3 things. You're doing 1, maybe. Okay? And then the ability to filter out distractions goes. So those are the 2 things. You have to understand that about yourself. Okay, so how do we deal with this? What do we do? These are the compensations that we have to make. I want you to understand that one of the most important things is the ability to focus. That means you concentrate on something, you're able to channel your mind, and then you are able to keep distractions out. So you're going to solve the problem. All right, so how does memory work? And this is a kind of a simplistic metaphor for it, but it's like the file cabinet, and the file clerk. All right? The part of your brain where you store memories is the hippocampus, short-term memories. So it's like a file cabinet. And you see something, and you put it in your hippocampus. If you have Alzheimer's disease, the hippocampus is diseased, so no matter what you want to remember, you can't remember it. Right? But most of the time, it is the file clerk that gets you into trouble. Meaning that you are easily distracted, you've got a lot going on, and you don't stop in order to focus enough to say, I want to remember. You're perfectly capable of remembering it. It's just that you have sensory overload. Women are much more susceptible to sensory overload than men. And that's because they're more aware. And, sitting there watching the Pittsburgh Steelers, there's not a lot going on in there anyway, All right, so the first thing that we do is we pay attention. Now, what pay attention means is being in the moment, understanding what's going on in real time in your life. And what happens is that what undermines that? Because if you're not in the moment, you're not going to remember things. And also, you're going to miss a lot. What undermines it? One is having sort of unreal expectations about what this moment's supposed to be. Always have it in the back of your mind, well, this is not what I expected. I expected something very different. I want this moment to be different. But when you say that, you are excluding the ability to take in what's happening. And so you're always preempting real life by what you thought, but it's always then about you. I thought, I expected, instead of what life brings, which is a lot more interesting and a lot more fascinating than what you think it should be. Okay? Very important. All right? The second thing that gets us into trouble is impatience. Now, men are much more apt to be impatient than women. Okay? Women have a different, they are much more in the moment, understanding what's going on. My daughters, I've got one daughter that has telepathy with the world. She senses everything. So impatience. Impatience says, I don't like this moment. I don't like this moment. I think the next moment is going to be better. Or this afternoon is going to be better than today or this morning. Or maybe tomorrow, it'll be better. And certain people, their whole life is wasted because they're always waiting for the next moment. Where's the only place that we can receive love? The only place that we can connect with other people and be listened to and to talk to others is in this moment. And so if we're always waiting for the next moment, life gets away. And you wonder, what did I do? And you're always thinking about the next moment. Okay, guidelines. What do I do with the fact that my prefrontal cortex is taking a 20% hit? How do I adjust to that? Okay, what do I do? The first thing is that we want to work shorter intervals. Okay, when you sit down, that's great. The mower going there. Story of my life. Let me get back on this. Shorter intervals. So you sit down and you're going to work. You work for 20 minutes on your check-in, okay? Then you get up, maybe take a break, maybe 30 minutes. But to say, I'm going to do my check-in and spend 3 hours, you're not going to get all of it done. Shorten the interval, because then you can focus, distractions are less disruptive. I see people, they make lists. They'll have a list of 5 things that they've got to do today, and they don't get any of them done. Okay? So what we want to do is, let's make that list one thing. But if something goes on that list, you've got to get it done. You've got to kill yourself to get it done. Otherwise, Days and weeks and months go by, and there's something unpleasant on it, and you don't get it done. The more unpleasant it is, start with it, okay? Just get that anxiety over with. The third thing is multitasking. Don't think that you're going to be able to do 3 or 4 things at once. Just get one thing done. Error identification. Super agers. One of the things that they are blessed with is they immediately know when something's not right. Okay? They will walk in here and there's a lamp or there's one little thing that's like, oh my God, look at that. They pick up errors immediately. Getting ready to drive an automobile in Charlotte, North Carolina. This is the most dangerous thing that I'm going to do all day. I need to make sure that I got my wits about me. Okay? Calm. Technology. Right, I'm going to tell just a quick little story. My grandfather was an Irish politician from South Boston, Massachusetts. He probably finished the 8th grade. May not have even finished that. He walked in here, he would have a Panama hat on, seersucker suits, those two-tone shoes, and your eyes would go right for him. He was a magnet. And so anything that he said to my brother and I, we were mesmerized by it. We were trying to catalog it. You know, it was just, you were in the sphere of this magic. He would take us to battlefields, and he would tell us the stories. You know, he would say, the rebels were stacked up to underneath your arms here, dead bodies everywhere. We'd be sitting there, oh my God, this is cool. Well, we found out he didn't really know anything about the battle. He thought he'd get mixed up, Revolutionary War. But we found out later that his stories were a lot more interesting than those markers. But technology has changed aging, because my relationship with my grandchildren, still it's tight, but also there's this little shred of, Grampy's not as smart as I am because he can't do that iPad. Katie has the same thing with me. She helps me do this. So technology has changed aging. There's that little bit of, Grampy's kind of slow. He didn't get what the technology was. How are you supposed to know that there's a stupid button? No one ever told you you can't read it. It's all technology. It's fluid intelligence. Okay? Another thing is, when in the clinic, I don't care about names. If you forget names and you come to me, I'm going to say you're fine. I don't care about names, and I don't care about technology. I do care about some things. We'll go over that. All right. Keep your mind open. Okay? We become defensive so fast. And what are we being defensive about? Well, partly it's our life experiences. As the prayer was, we're supposed to know everything, and we don't. And you know what? The place that you are going to learn is the least surprise. You prejudge a situation, you prejudge a person, and the next thing you know, you're shocked. And so novel solutions come from realizing, one, I don't know everything, and two, I want to know more. And what a nice thing to have your grandson, who's 14 years old, teaching you something. It makes him feel good about himself, and it opens up avenues for you. Except not being good at something. That's why I did the art in the book. And I was making a point that I love painting, and I'm not very good at it. My daughter is a professional artist, and she'll come in and look at some of the stuff I'm doing, and she'll go, "Wow, Dad, I need to work on this." But it's such a bond, and I get to see how she would do it. And it's okay for me not to be good at that. Okay? I don't have to fight that battle. All right, anxiety. Anxiety is that feeling inside of us that something's not right. It's defined as painful uneasiness, and we are born with it. Now, some of it comes from our lives, but it will dominate your life if you don't understand how anxiety affects you and how you have to negotiate and navigate it. Alcoholism Drug addiction, what is that? That is trying to make that painful uneasiness go away. Just please go away. So, you take a hit off of, I drank a little bit of bourbon last night. It was, what's it called? Happy Van Winkle? Anxiety went away. Anxiety drives us. It is a destructive force. And the only way that we can get to understand it is to confront it. Our life experiences. All families are dysfunctional. Any family that doesn't think they're dysfunctional is really dysfunctional. So when we think of this being so supportive, and this is where unconditional love comes from, and we don't get that, there's this gap between our expectation and our reality. What comes from that is despondency and anxiety. Okay? Everybody deals with it. No one wants to talk about it. I wrote a lot, and I would welcome y'all to read the chapter. There's called an essay on anxiety, and I talk about how you get rid of it. Okay. All right, how are we doing on time? I got 5 minutes. I'm not going to make it. All right. What is it that protects us from decline and dementia? All right. One is exercise. There are people who get dementia who are exercise freaks. Okay, so it's not 100%.
All of mine go.
Okay. So, I should have had one of those lavaliers, exercise, when you exercise, there's a substance that's made in the muscles that you use. It's called BDNF. And BDNF, if you take and drop it on neurons and nerve cells, they start to swell and interdigitate. It is miracle grow for the brain. So exercise is important. What's just as important is that any exercise is okay. Just because someone gets on the treadmill, what happens is that we compare, and when you start comparing, you get sad. So if you take a walk and it's 500 yards, and that's what you want to do, that's of a benefit, okay? And then when someone comes, your next door neighbor said, I just ran a 10K, I feel great, there's endorphins, tell them to go to hell. What we've learned, we learned two major lessons from COVID. And one, of course, is that obesity kills. 45% of the population now is morbidly obese, or not obese, or morbidly obese. And when someone got sick and they were heavy, 75% of those people when they were admitted to the hospital died. The second thing is really important, and we talked just a little bit about this, that the COVID took away non-essential friendships and people that you met in your life. That the hairdresser, a waitress, going to Park Road Shopping Center. Who would have thought Park Road Shopping Center would be the center of the universe? So what happened was that these seemingly non-essential and unimportant people were taken out of our lives. Our family was still there. As dysfunctional as that is, maybe it's right. But when these people were taken away, our lives diminished. And that sort of richness and that fabric was taken away. Realizing that lady that lives next door, when you come out and you spend 5 minutes talking to her, your brain's exploding. Okay, so those non-essential things are really important. Education. If you have an advanced degree, a graduate degree, I guess we call it, you are less likely to get dementia as you are if you have a college degree as opposed to a high school diploma, as opposed to not getting through high school. Now, it's not clear that anyone that went to the University of North Carolina gets that credit. Okay? All right. New knowledge. I actually got a medical degree, and I shouldn't be, so shouldn't use them as joke bait. New knowledge. Trying to make your brain work better. I use an example of a super aged woman who is, and a lot of you know her, but she was going to France, And she signed up at Queen's to take French. And I said, well, how's it going? She said, it's going terrible. But it's so much fun. And I hope she didn't recognize when she came back. She said, I didn't use any of the French. All it is sitting in that classroom and listening. It's not about the French. It's about the interactions with those people there. And also more about the desire to improve as opposed to the accomplishment. Okay? We've accomplished a lot. We don't need to do that anymore. We don't need to show the end. Let's show the process. Positive thoughts breed positive actions. A study at Duke, two groups, identical. They had heart disease, they had calf, they had the same type of disease. And they asked them one question, are you healthy? And one group said, yeah, I feel healthy, I feel good. And the other goes, oh my God, I sold my beach house and now I'm going to, And the people with positive thoughts, guess what? They live a whole lot longer. Positive thoughts. I use an example in the book of a young girl, okay? And we have one grandchild that's special needs, and it takes a long time. So I think of my daughter Leslie being in the car. She's not like this, but she's gotten up late, and they got to get the kids to school. And so she is driving down Park Road, and she's right in front of St. Anne's, and there's this lady, little gray-headed little lady, you could barely see her head above the seat, and she's driving erratically. And you can do one or two things. One is you can say, that lady has no right to be on the road because we're trying to get kids to school. What the hell is she thinking about? Get off the road. Then you go flying by her, maybe flip her a sign, and off you go. From that, your brain is flooded with these negative chemicals. Okay? They are the tears that you shed when you're sad are different than the tears that you shed when you were happy. So your body and everything about your brain is being bathed in these negative chemicals. The other way is, I'm worried about this woman. There's something funny. And all of a sudden the woman pulls over, you go, she's drooping on the right side, she can't move her right arm, and she's had a stroke. So the driver calls the ambulance, the kids get in the car with her until the ambulance arrives, and all of a sudden you've taught those children how do you deal with adversity. Okay? It's not that you scream it's that you care about other people. You see what their lives are like or what's going on. Sleep. One of the most important things that we do, there's a book that I've just read, it's called Why We Sleep. I would recommend it. There are several stages to sleep. What happens is when we drink too much alcohol, we say, I'm going to sleep good tonight. No, you're not. Because you don't go into those deep stages of sleep, which allow you, there's a set of cells in the brain called microglia. And every night they come and clean out all of the junk that's in between your neurons, and they only work when you're asleep. So there's so many advantages. I like people to get 9 hours of sleep. I like to go to bed, and it makes Mary furious because she'll say, Chuck, you cannot go to sleep. It's only 8:30. And I go, who cares? Okay, who's keeping score here? Okay, I get up at about, a little bit near 5 or 5:30. So, but sleep, 9 hours, really important. And there's a lot of stuff in the book about how you get sleep. The medications for sleep, there is not one of them that's not detrimental to your brain. Not one. Okay? Benadryl, no. None of them. And we can talk about that later. All right, so real quick, number one marker for cognitive decline in a lifetime is hearing loss. Not DNA, not arteriosclerosis, hearing loss. If you feel like you're not hearing well, you've got to get your hearing checked. 2, what drives dementia is hypertension. If you go into your doctor and they say, your blood pressure is 160 over 95. And you say, I have white coat syndrome. I'm always nervous around doctors. And they say, okay, that sounds good. No. All right? white coat syndrome doesn't exist. And because if it's white coat syndrome, you're going to have that all the time. Anytime that you get nervous, your blood pressure is going to pop up. So you stop them and say, look, my blood pressure, if you are 80 years old, your blood pressure should be around 140. If you are 70 years old, it should be around 130. But hypertension drives memory loss. Depression. As we age, depression changes. When someone is 22 years old, 25 years old, you look at them and they are depressed. Their physiognomy and their face, their expressions, their body habits, and you go, that guy's depressed. Well, when you age, depression presents itself in a different way. It can be irritability. You say, my husband's depressed. He's the most irritable guy. Or two, anhedonia, losing the pleasure out of things that used to give him tremendous pleasure. Apathy, I don't care anymore. Dysfunctional relationships. Depression presents itself differently, and it needs to be aggressively treated. And you hear people say all the time, I don't want to take medication to make myself a different person. All we're doing is trying to replace the neurotransmitters in your brain back to a normal level. Sleep apnea, we've talked a little bit about. Dental hygiene. A periodontal disease is associated with a significant rise in dementia and Alzheimer's disease because of the chronic inflammation. So you want to be very aggressive. And some people, they kind of let it go because they, oh, well, look, I'm 75 years old. I don't need to go to the dentist. It's probably the most important guy, except for the memory doctor. Okay, so are we okay? Have I got 2 minutes to talk about this?
You're fine. You're
You sure? They took all my time. Okay. Expectations, societal expectations. As I said, that when I was doing heart surgery and I had we were going to do a project or something, and I walked in and I saw 10 guys sitting there, I knew we weren't going anywhere. Okay? But if you give me 6 or 7 RNs, I can change the world. And so one of the things about, now, society has changed. Things have changed dramatically. In my high school class, there's one, Blair Wall right there. I don't know whether she finished high. Blair, I know you think you did. And I know you think you're smarter than me, but that's a different thing. But there are 3 girls that finished higher than I did in my high school class that became nurses. All right? In that group, for that generational thing, you had a couple of options. You could be a nurse, you could be a teacher, you could be a secretary. I have a daughter that's Wall Street. I mean, you know, she's well, she's not really a person, she's kind of a happening, but that wasn't open. Now, I'll tell you who benefited from that, and that was society in general. To have that intelligence on a ward at Presbyterian Hospital, the care was unbelievable. Or those handing me and helping me do surgery. So things have changed, okay? Roles. I almost spelled it wrong. I think you changed it. It was R-O-L-L-S somewhere. Roles. Each of us has multiple roles that we undertake. We are a husband, we're a father, we're a surgeon, but whatever it is. Women, the difference about women in roles, a sister, a mother, a grandmother. Female roles come with responsibility. Male roles don't. Okay, think about this. If dad comes home and he's been working, and he's, oh, he must have had a tough day. Mom has, and I'll have to say that when I was doing surgery, I would come home, and Mary, one of the first times that I came home, she said, let me just give you the game plan here, Okay, I'm not going to have you doing a whole bunch of stuff when you come home. But what you did today is of no interest to these children or to me. You could have saved Barack Obama's life. What we want is a father here paying attention to us. And so those roles, and she was pretty bad about that, but those roles, they become harder, okay? Being a daughter for someone who is struggling with memory loss. Also, marriages change. The chemistry between a husband and a wife, it changes. Oftentimes, the chemistry is already changed by the time that someone develops dementia. So then you have the issue of that this person has, and I didn't know that they had memory loss, but that's what, that they have a retraction of a lot of their affection. And so the relationship's already fractured. But remember this, responsibility. Being a sister to another sister is a lot harder than being a brother to another brother, because it's just bros. You know, hey, what time do we tee off? Sisters, you know, they're trying to plan all kinds of stuff, all right? Transitions. I'm going to make this kind of quick. We'll truncate this a little bit, but transitions for women are less celebrated and harder than transitions for men. Does any female in this room, has anyone gotten a gold watch from stopping working, from retirement? Is there any gold watch here? I don't think so. Okay. If I had guys here, everybody would raise their hand. Oh yeah, I worked 30 years at the bank and they gave me a gold watch. All right? That's a symbol. Because if you are, let's say that you've been the matriarch and you've been a stay-at-home mom, and your husband retires, what does that mean? Does it mean that I'm free, or that things are going to be good? No. It means you're home for lunch, and then you start to worry about, oh, is he doing okay? I know, the transition. And you've been holding this whole thing together, and then you have another burden. So there's a tremendous difference in transitions from males to females. Generational. Now, I am amazed at my son and my nephews, how involved they are with their children, as opposed to what I was. And of course, my wife, Mary, she was here, she said, you were never there. You were there. I was there all the time, but I'm not going to bring that back. All right, the fact is that boomers, we have some real challenges with retirement. And I think that there's never been, okay, this is people that were from 1946 to 1964. Early boomers, 46 to 55, 55 to 64, late boomers. The most incredible generation ever on the face of the earth. Never been better educated, better prepared for life, but we learned how to compete with one another. Remember the first day of school, they'd say, last year we had 20 people. Now we have 46, and half of y'all are going to be in this temporary classroom over here. You tried out for the football team, there were 75 people, and they kept 30. We were used to having saying, you're not good enough. You find something else to do. So that competition, because we'd walk into a room and you'd go, how many are there? What kind of shot do I have? All right? Boomers, we use the left side of our brain. The left side of our brain says, how do I measure up? Do I have the right stuff? What is it that the world demands of me? Okay? Now, that's a completely different person that lives on the right side of your brain, is who you really are. Okay? You might say, I really don't want to be on the football team. That looks kind of rough. But that voice on the right. Now, I talk a lot in the book about transitions. Okay? So I'm not going to give away the plot here. But women have so many pressures on them that voice on the right side of your brain is very soft. And so when retirement comes, you say, well, I think I'll paint. And your husband says, well, we're moving to Myrtle Beach. I just bought a house, Okay. So the deal is that soft voice, barely audible, which allows you to connect with who you were, who you are. That's me. And as we age, that's the person we have to be comfortable with. That's authentic. The world doesn't need another hard charger. Okay? We don't need any more of those people. We need people that are soft and gentle and say, this is what I've struggled with and this is what I want to do. And then you've got to have the resolve to do it. Okay? Last thing, late thoughts. Place is just a matter of, oftentimes women are put in places during retirement that are not the place they want to be. Okay? I have one friend and his wife, I said, well, how do you like Florida? And she says, well, Jim loves it. And I go, well, what about you? And she said, well, I really haven't thought about it because I don't really have a choice. I got to make a life in Florida. But what I really want to do is come back and be closer to my grandchildren. And yet he loves it because he gets to play golf with his buddies and they sit there about talk about what they used to do, which is a waste of time. Okay? Let's talk about what we can do tomorrow. I like that. That's interesting. What we used to do? No. All right, late thoughts. Life has a tendency to beat us up. Okay? We have such good intentions. We're a certain person at a certain time in our life. And I write a whole chapter on this. But we get beat up. And it's actually when the times that we suffer the most, when we're working through the hardest part of our lives, trying to keep things together, or trying to be that oil that keeps a family together, or having a child that's struggling. When we look back at our lives, the times that we're going to remember and value the most is the time we struggled. This is what being human is. I dedicated the book to my patients and their families because I feel like that's what human beings look like at their best. Thank you. If I had to choose between being deaf and blind and late in life, I would take that I'd rather be blind. One of the things you might be looking at is vascular dementia is a little bit different in that oftentimes they will retain certain areas of expertise, especially as you get older, like 80, 82, 84, there's more vascular dementia than there is pure Alzheimer's. One of the things though, take what she gives you. Just take it, don't hold it lightly, because what I hate is when my families start telling me about what the patient can't do, and I want to know what they can do. So hold it lightly. Dementia is an overriding term, and there's 5 different types of dementia. Alzheimer's being the most common, especially after the age of 65. But there's vascular dementia, there's dementia with Lewy body, there's frontotemporal dementia, and then we're starting to see a whole lot of CTE, where people have played football or soccer or whatever and are having the concussions. We've had 5 professional football players. I had 20 Division I college players, and I'm starting to see some people that had a lot of concussions in high school. One question y'all should ask me is, in the literature, 2 out of 3 of patients who have dementia, specifically Alzheimer's, are female. Okay. 75% of the caregivers that I deal with that are affected were female. And why is it that women develop a dementia at a different incidence than men. We don't know. There's the Women's Health Initiative, 1993 through 2011, I think it was. And they did a study and they gave women estrogen when they were menopausal. They gave some early, some late. The people that got the estrogen and progesterone ended up with more dementia. So we don't know how this works. There's an element that we're not sure of. So I wouldn't get too fired up whether you're on the HRT or not, but there's no answer to that. And anybody that tells me they got the answer is not right. Absolutely, but more on the vascular side. It's one of there's an increased incidence of dementia. And what we found out, though, is that if we are really good at managing blood sugar, the complications of diabetes go way down. So those monitors that you can pull up and say, that's made a huge difference. Yes, ma'am.
I think I have the answer to why women have more dementia than men. It's because all of our lives we have to remember where the scissors are.
I'm not buying this. Here, my wife says that all the time.
And tell them that when they open the refrigerator, the ketchup is right in front of them.
I was just going to say that. This is BS. Wow, if Mary was here, she would be up cheering. Yes, ma'am. We applaud, this is, you already know this about your children and grandchildren. We applaud a certain type of intelligence. That is, that we take a certain body of material and we listen to a lecture or we read it and then we get tested on it and they say, oh, this kid can get 9 out of 10, we're going to make him a genius. And there's a kid that doesn't read very well, who's probably smarter, and they were eliminated. The process means, and what I'm getting at on that is, you're trying as you age to open up new parts of your brain. And you do that by going through the process of being scared about, losing someone's name. Names. I remember my father and mother would be having dinner, and my father would say, Norma, what's that guy's name? And she would go over and say, Chuck, I don't really know his name. I don't know. I think I was in business and we did something together. Well, he ruins his whole dinner because he can't remember that guy's name. And then the guy comes up and he doesn't know who my father is either. That's just the way it goes. Names don't matter, and no one is offended by saying, I'm blocking on your name just a little bit, help me. And they don't be afraid to do that, because what happens when you can't remember someone's name, you go to the other side of the room. Say, oh my God, I hope they don't see me. No, it's not working. Right? Tuesday, 1 o'clock. Yes, and the reason is when they do a functional MRI and they're looking at you reading, the parts of your brain light up that you're reading about. Okay, so if you're reading about skiing down the Alps, all the stuff that every place in your brain that would be used skiing down the Alps. And how I know this is because romance novels. Okay, you read a romance novel and your brain gets all gooey because of love and everything. And that's why they're the most, because the same parts of your falling in love comes from reading that fiction. So, but that's good. But I still believe that. Also, it gets us away from this, fiction is fun. And you can't say, well, I just read Les Mis. You can't find a better story. I mean, it's just unbelievable how good it is. But there's no endpoint to it. It's not like I'll be able to tell you where Harry Truman went to high school. Who cares? What I'm interested in is those characters and what happened, and sort of get involved with them. And you can't put it down. You're flipping through and say, what happens to Jean Valjean? You know, that's what you want. Not